So I'll quickly introduce myself and then ask Balaji to introduce himself. I've worked in marketing for 15 years. Most recently, I was a CMO at a Series B tech company. Currently, I'm a fractional CMO and business growth consultant. I help B2B companies acquire customers and grow their revenue. I'm based in the US, out of Chicago, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Balaji, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in. So I'm Balaji. Most of you all know I am a brand strategist and a design coach. I help solopreneurs build hero brands, leveraging systems, frameworks, design frameworks, and strategy to build their hero brands so that that's sustainable. And because personal branding is a long-term game, a lot of mindset is required there. So it's kind of I help them with strategy, brand identity, systems and processes and other frameworks and mindset to help them play the personal branding game and look at it long term and come out and enjoy the journey and build real brands and build their businesses around that and make the most out of it. So that's pretty much what I help folks with.
Thank you, Balaji. So Balaji, how did you get into personal branding?
Great question. That's a great start. So I think a couple of weeks I posted about this. So after a good 7, 8 year career, I took a big change and moved to Canada in 2018. And all I knew was 5 people, and all of them were retired, and no one to pretty much help me. Um, and it was at one point that I had to do something on my own. At that point, I decided that whatever I'm going to do going forward is should be something that I really like. And the only way then was at that point was to build a brand to get known. So that's how I started my personal branding journey. And when I started out, I started to teach people content design. When I say design, I don't mean graphic design here. I mean, I talk more on the information design. It's all about building intelligence over the information that we have and how to do it and how to create a better reading experience and so on and so forth. I started teaching that. And from there, meeting a lot of people, a lot of clients. I've been improving on the program, and then whatever the program is what is how I've grown my brand, what I've learned, and with so many interactions I've had, and also with the personal branding market growing and the need the need and the effort that needs to go into personal branding has really widened. So um, from starting that to where I am today, that's pretty much where I started and where I am today, teaching strategy, a brand identity, and a lot more things with mindset and all of that. So it started off very small, but what I also want to emphasize here is you have to start somewhere. And that's where I started, and this is where I am today.
So Balaji, that brings me to my next question. When people are starting their personal branding journey, where do you recommend they start? What should they prioritize?
Sure. So the first mindset that anyone starting a personal brand today should have this very clear in their mind. It is a long-term journey, and it's not a one shot to the moon kind of a thing. That's the first place that you need to start. You have to also understand that what you are good at, what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are. You have to be very clear. Everybody talks about figuring out your ICP. All of that is very important, no doubt about it. But before all of that, because it is our brand that we are building, we have to be clear of our strengths and work on our strengths. And maybe you might not have, what I'd say, a value that you could offer at this point, but you know what your strengths are. Figure out whatever that value that you'd be offering is, and then figure out your ICP. Take your time. Don't have to start something, or let's say on January 1st and January 15th, you should, be all out there. So that's not the way you approach personal branding. So first you got to get comfortable. Let's say you choose a platform, say for example, if it's LinkedIn, try to understand the platform. Try to see how it works. So the main thing is for you to start. And I would also say, take some time and then come up with whatever your value or the offer that you're trying to build. And also in the meantime, it's also important to determine the platform that you want to be in and choose only one to start with. get on that one, learn the platform, master it, and also get better at, thinking, writing, designing, creating content, focus on all of that. Try to make that a routine, and then hit the market with your offer, and have, content is the new brand identity going forward. Try to get good at that and then move to the next platform. That's something that I want to share. And the next one is starting on one platform is key, because you have to understand our time and energy is finite, and every platform has its own DNA. We have to understand that. So, which will take time and focused efforts. Focused efforts are extremely important here, because we are one person. We have to really focus where we're putting our time and energy into. And the question that I get asked, how many posts should I make when I start off? Everybody thinks posting 6 or 7, starting when you're starting, posting 6 or 7 times a week is the way you need to start. No, I would not say that at all. Start with two, and after 2 weeks, make it three. And then after a month or two, try to do five. So it's like this. So if two posts are going to take you 2 hours or 3 hours, that's fine. Just do two a week, because that's the amount of time that you can give it. Give it only that. And then in your third week or fourth week, once you get better at this, automatically within the same 3 hours, you'll be able to do one more post. That's how you need to work on this, rather than trying to work for 12 hours, 10 hours, doing so many things and just then getting burnt out. It shouldn't be like that. It's progressing from two, three, four, five. Progress should be like that, and not, it should not be about intensity. It should never be about that. So that's the one of the main things that I would like to tell folks who are just starting or just started or having difficulty at this point. And there is so much more than just posting, because engaging with others and being consistent is so important. Because when you engage with everybody, you understand how the platform works. What is it that people are interested in? What are the kind of directions that people have taken to talk about a certain point or a certain topic? So it gives you get to learn a lot when you engage with others. And also, genuinely connecting with people on a daily basis is really, really crucial. So a personal branding is the sum of many parts. So that's what I would say when folks are starting out their personal brand journey.
I love that, Balaji, and I like the idea too of starting slowly. I think posting once or twice per week and making that a habit, and then from there, posting more frequently. I think starting that way, you're a lot more likely to stick with it and do it for the long term, which is when you start seeing results. Usually, it's much later on.
Right.
I think engaging too and commenting is very important. I didn't really do a lot of commenting when I first started. I wish I did, because I would have learned the platform a lot
Yes, of
better.
course.
But I remember like 1 month into posting, when I did start commenting consistently and engaging with other creators, that's when a lot of my posts started getting engagement as well and
Correct.
gotten more impressions and things like that. So that's great. So Balaji, you already touched on this, but it sounds like you have a systematic approach to this process. What systems or processes have you built for yourself or others that help with this?
Sure. So, as I told you, we are a single person here, and our time and energy is finite, right? We have to first learn to break things down so that it makes it easier to approach things. So say for example, let's take content. I kind of break it out into three buckets, which is content, engagement, and networking. Okay, these three are tasks that you have to do every single day, right? So content by itself, if you take its, I break it down into five actually. One is thinking, so researching and thinking. One is writing, then comes designing, then comes distributing, right? So what I do is I have specific times that I've set for myself to create content. When I write content, I only write content. When I design, I only design. I don't write and design the same day. The reason is, when you do one thing for a longer period of time, you get into a flow state. It's a habit that you need to build. So once you get into the flow state, the quality of content that we produce becomes even better, right? So I kind of have two blocks during the week that I have only for content. I don't do anything else at that point. Of course, everyday posting, everyday commenting, and everyday engaging, I have a time slot that I have for that. So I make sure I come there, and also for the engagement, I have a proper list that I would like to engage with. So all of this gets, it takes time to build all of this, right? You can't do have anything, and it's a work in progress. So I have that list, so I have a particular time that I do that, and then I have another slot that I keep it for networking. When I say networking, connecting with people, or reciprocating to folks who have already commented, or you want to reach them in the DMs. I have something specific set for that. So when you actually manage these three really well and have a system for that, most of your work kind of gets done and ticked. So that's a big win. You start your day with a big win. So this is how I approach my systems. And of course, there are a lot of other client work and a lot of other things that are also there that I do. But if I don't get all of this done, it's always going to be at the back of my mind, and my energy is going to get diverted in multiple ways. And then that's when every other task becomes like a really big deal. So when I have systems like this, it just works very well for me. I hope this will be useful for everybody as well.
Yeah, I really like that approach of you dividing up thinking versus writing versus design, because I think each of those is almost like different muscles. When you're thinking
Right.
and brainstorming, you want to be very free flowing. You don't want to be judgmental, and you want to just come up with a lot of ideas. And then when you're
Right.
writing, you generally want to concentrate more and find some kind of a structure or story or format that you're going to use. And then obviously when you're designing, it's a lot more creative. So I
Right.
like that you break that up, and it makes a lot of sense. Once you get into that writing mode, it's a lot easier to write 2 to 3 posts in a row versus if you interrupt yourself by writing and then designing and then coming back to writing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Right. And also, if I can just add here, and also for the design part of it, where most of the people, have a really tough time. So I kind of have like a template that I have. I don't waste too much of time trying to come up with new ideas every single time, because it is because it's just not practical. So we have to understand systems when you build. It's not just a process. It should be very frictionless. Systems are built so that the level of friction or the percentage of friction is very, very minimal. So that's when you get your best work done. If not, you'll be distracted and then you would miss the important one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would say too, systems ensure that you have a certain quality level. When you have templates and you refine them over time, you're also ensuring that your output is going to be higher quality. So that
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. So Balaji, you say that content design is the brand identity. Can you explain
Yes.
that?
Sure. See, content content is the most important piece in this. Okay. Though I'm not trying to distract it with design, content is very, very important. That is your driving factor for your brand. But content plus design is going to be the new brand identity. I'll tell you why. Because uh, anyone today, even me, you, or anybody in the audience, we spend so much of time consuming digital content. We are tired, we are bored, and how do you create um, interest, and how do you make people stop the scroll and look at your content? This is what is very challenging, and that's why design plays a very important role in personal branding, because most of the things that we share is very content heavy. If people have to stop, the hook and all of that is important. Over and above that, it has to be easy for them to read. They should not spend an extra calorie trying to understand, or trying to. That 1 second is enough for them to move on to something else. So once you create a consistent reading experience, you leave them with a certain experience. People forget the content, but people never forget the experience. Because let's assume if I post 5 carousels a week. So let's say anybody else, I suggest at least three a week. So that's about 150 carousels a year. So you have 150 opportunities for you to um, um, encourage people to come read your content. Your content can be fantastic, but if it's not readable, people would miss the value and they would move on, right? So having said that, the content has to read very well, has to flow very well. And once you have 150 opportunities, every time they keep looking at it, they build a psychological understanding that when I read Balaji's content, when I read Andrew's content, This is what I expect. The expectation that you build is what a good brand is all about. That's why a big advocate of content plus design is going to be a new brand identity.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that point that you made that people forget the content, but they remember the experience. And I think they remember how your content made them
Correct.
feel at the time. I think that is the power of great branding. So,
Correct.
Balaji, what is the role of brand identity in personal branding? Why does it matter?
So I think brand identity is very compelling today because we have to understand who we are competing with and what we are competing with. Well, let's say if I'm a coach, okay, another coach alone is not my competition. The real competition here is grabbing the attention from other creators. All creators are pretty much a competition on one level, I would say, right? So this is the biggest one in my opinion because as I just told, if you post 3 carousels a week, that's 150 opportunities, right, to create that attention. When you consistently showcase value with a certain style, people remember you. You have to make it effortless for them to spot you, connect with you, and remember you. See, this is a very important part. Humans love order and comfort. When you create familiarity, people find that very comforting. Many miss out on that. So let's take, for example, I'm just making this up. So let's say you take Starbucks for example. Okay, forget about the coffee and so on and so forth. When you enter, every Starbucks is the same because any Starbucks you enter, you feel a sense of familiarity. So that's what big brands do. And big brands or personal brands, small or big, doesn't matter. It's how much of comfort and how much of order you bring in through familiarity, giving that familiarity. That is why brand identity is very, very important. And we have to drive with value, which is a given. But when that value is delivered in a certain style, the order and familiarity makes your audience connect with you at a much stronger level. It's about when they feel familiar, they feel stronger. You have to pass that strength to them. That is only possible through brand identity. And that's why it is compelling today in the personal branding landscape, in my opinion.
I love that, and I love the Starbucks example. And you're right. Like every time you enter a Starbucks, there's a similar feel to the place. You probably remember other times you've been there in the past. That makes a lot of sense. So, Balaji, carousels are popular on LinkedIn. You've already referenced them. What are some common mistakes that people make with carousels?
That's a great topic. Let me answer this with some questions that people regularly ask me. So, how many slides are the most optimal for a carousel? If I post 15 slides, don't you think it's too much? Not get questions like this. So, first things first, the number of slides do not matter. Your content should determine the number of slides and not the other way around. So if your content demands it, then you should definitely go for it. So that's one thing. And then how do I approach carousel creation? So this is what I'd suggest. First, write down the content. Let's say in Notion or Google Docs, write it down and then bring it into the carousel. Because if you don't do that and directly bring it into the carousel, you're going to be distracted a lot, and it'll go, and then you'll get distracted with why not I put an image here. And you do you remember I told you the flow state? You will have a problem there. So first write and then design. And then the biggest question that I keep: how do I go about choosing colors? So let me answer this for y'all. So always choose one light and one dark color and one highlight color, and all the 3 colors should complement each other. That is very important. It has to be very modular. And the next biggest reveal here is color is one, but how we use the color matters the most. This is where a lot of people miss out. And also ensure that you follow the 60-30-10 rule. In my case, if you'll remember, purple is my highlight color, but I don't use that color more than 10 to 15% of the times. It's mostly black or white that I use. So you have to use that highlight color minimally for it to truly stand out. So this is some few thoughts that I have for you to choose colors. And the last one would be, how do I choose fonts? In this case, we have to choose fonts that are reader friendly. We have to understand we are displaying content here. If you try to add too much variation or try to get too creative with the font, you're actually distracting them more, which is not what we want. And I would choose a maximum of two fonts, one headline and one body. Maybe a third font that can be highlight one, that I use very, very minimally, probably less than 5% of the times. And also make sure there is a variety in them. For example, let's say if you take the Poppins font, you also have to have a variety. When I say variety, in the font weights, it should be light, it should be regular, it should be bold, medium bold, very bold. So you kind of, when you have like a variety there, that'll be really good when you want to build visual hierarchy. So these are just some of the myths and mistakes, how what people see, and this is how you can avoid that.
I love that, Balaji, and I know you've covered a lot of this in some of your posts. So I think for people not familiar with some of these concepts, definitely check out Balaji's posts. He has carousels and all of these topics, and they break it down in a lot of detail. So, Balaji, where do you see personal branding heading in the next 1, 2, or 3 years?
I think it's truly going to explode. You're going to see more and more people getting into the space. The word that a lot of people would use is it is going to get saturated. It has already saturated to an extent. It's only going to get saturated a lot. So that is exactly the reason why I am emphasizing you need a brand identity. When I say identity, I don't mean the vanity part of it. There's a lot that needs to go, and you need to have a brand strategy. You should have a clear brand identity. You should have a content. You should use content as your identity because, as I told you, 150 opportunities. So that's more important. And then also the mindset part of things as well, because once a market is saturated, unless you really stand out of the crowd, you will eventually get lost, and also that will lead to a lot of doubts, self doubts, and so on and so forth. So, so the funny part is this. So I post every 6 to 7 days a week. I have a good brand and all of that. But somebody else who just started and posting 2 days a week, that content might not make any sense, but they are also personal brands. You see who we are competing with? So unless you have a good brand identity that truly makes you stand out, that's why I'm saying you have to build hero brands for yourself. So that's where I see it going. It is going to explode.
And Balaji, I know you help solopreneurs build hero brands. Can you tell us more about your program?
Sure. So the program I run is called the Champions Program. It again ties back to my mission of helping solopreneurs build hero brands, embracing strategy, design frameworks, and systems in positive ways. And I've structured this program in such a way that we start with brand strategy, then we get into the brand identity, then we help them with a suite of design frameworks specifically built for them. It also brings down their content design efforts by at least 70%. And then we also have another systems framework that helps them manage their time and energy really well and stay on top of the game, and also helps them to attract and spend more time attracting and networking with people who they potentially want to work with. See, and all of this put together, it can be very hard, but when you learn to do things the right way, you not only end up winning, and more importantly, you enjoy this journey because, as I told you in the beginning, personal branding is a long-term game. You have to enjoy it, and you should enjoy what you're doing. That's how you build a brand, and not like consistently always working hard all the time. Intensity will not get you anywhere. It is consistency, and you have to enjoy being consistent. So my program is built around all of these ideas in mind. My program is called the Champions Program. And I've also had Andrew, as I told you, I also came up just recorded a masterclass, the four-part framework to build a hero brand that is visible, visual, and virtual. So maybe at the end of this, we can probably leave it in the chat for them. You guys can take a look at it, and also you can also find that in my features section as well.
Thank you, Balaji. And for anybody interested in learning more about the masterclass, the URL is subscribepage.io/Balaji on brand. We'll also share it in a comment on this post. Balaji, I love your brand colors. I know your carousels when I see them on my feed. I don't even really need to even see your name next to them. I know they're yours. I'm curious, how did you come up with those colors?
Great question. So that's why I told you. So I started, you have to have a framework to do all of this. So I started with my brand strategy, trying to understand, what I'm good at, what my strengths, my weaknesses, and then seeing what is it that I can help people with, and then also understanding what is the value that I can offer and how I can offer that value. So and then I have another framework for the brand archetypes. So I'm the innovator kind of brand archetype. So once I then pick that, and then so I wanted a color that is creative, that is authoritative, that is fun, and things like that. So I kind of have all of that, and then go pick. So that now, why did I pick this color? I have a long story, a foundation of why I picked the color. Unless you have a connection of why you picked the color, every 6 months you'll want to keep changing the color because you don't know why you picked it. So this is what I've been having for almost 3+ years now, and I'll just continue to have it. So that's how I picked my long story short.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the story behind it. So you touched on this very high level when you were covering the systems part. It sounds like you do have a system for coming up with content topics for your posts or topics to cover. Can you touch on that? Are there content themes that you try to stick with, or how do you approach when you're planning for new posts?
Sure. So I think this should be helpful for everybody. So what you get, so what I would, request all of you all to do is have 4 columns, and have one like, you know, the want, your ICP. What are their wants, what are their pain points, what are their goals, what are their frustrations, right? So break it down and start writing, filling filling up that for your ICP. You might have 10 for each, and you can keep adding as you move along your journey. And whenever you're creating content, you come there and keep looking at it. That'll also keep changing. So once you keep on looking at it, you kind of understand. And then also, when you engage in other people in your other niche creators account, right? You'll go to the comments and see what are people having frustrations with or struggling with. All of those can give us more content ideas. So that's how I kind of break things down and have a system, and that's what I do to come up with consistent content all the time.
I love that idea of looking at other creators' comments and using that to come up with topics. Thank you again, Balaji, for being on, and I think you've shared a lot of great advice.